No.
Hello, we'll just start in about few minutes. Please hold on. We are letting people in, so we'll start in about 2-3 minutes. Thank you. There are 22 waiting, so Sweta will start maybe in 2-3 minutes. Okay? Yeah, they're joining
Yeah.
actually. So yeah, let them join in. So. Sweta, you're also from NCBS, right?
No, so I am actually.
Okay, we'll start. Okay, I got it. Okay, you can start after some time. Let the 17 join in, and okay. Yeah, I think Orko Prabhu, is it okay if we can start?
Yes, dear, we can start.
Yeah, so you can keep admitting whoever is
Yeah,
joining.
sure.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome. Although it's quite rainy and stormy and windy in the eastern side of the country, and as you all are aware, we just went through a big mega storm also, which happened after 200 years, it seems. So that's quite interesting. So welcome to our the last webinar of a series of webinar which we started around 19th of this month, and it focused on women in conservation, wildlife conservation, and we had some great talented people like Ashwika Kapoor, who is happens to be a wildlife filmmaker. Then we had Tiasha Addo, who is a fishing cat biologist and also a President Award winner. Then we had Iravati, who spoke about her experience with wolves, and now we have Sweta, and we also had Dalia, who happens to be a herpetologist. So it was a although we had such disaster happening all around, but thanks to everyone's patience and participation, we had excellent and amazing response, and we had great sessions going on amidst all of this. So thank you again for joining in. And today I would like to introduce you to Sweta, who happens to be a carnivore ecologist. And she has worked extensively in Himachal Pradesh and with and on leopard. And it's just not about leopard ecology, but also she has managed the conflicts around conflict issues. In fact, she's worked on conflict issues, and she's actually worked under one of my most favorite person and a very good friend, Vidya Atreya. And so that's how I know her, in fact, personally. And so I don't know whether her colleague could join today, or through, but I don't think she could join. Sadly, we still again have another storm which happened today also. So Sweta, I'm not sure whether I could do much justice to your introduction, but I would suggest that you go ahead and introduce yourself and your work. Thank you very much, and please take over. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining into this webinar. I'm very happy to see a very nice turnout, and thanks, Heel, for giving me this platform to present my work. So I will be talking about my work in presentation format. So I'll be sharing my presentation right now. As we mentioned before, for the people who have joined, it's much better for me if you ask me questions at the end of my presentation so that I can address them once I'm done with the whole section of it. If you actually want to type out your questions in the chat, that is also completely fine with us. Yeah. So I'll be sharing my presentation now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Sweta, please, we can see your screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I am a doctoral fellow currently at the Center for Wildlife Studies. I have worked extensively on leopards since 2015 in Himachal Pradesh, leopards and people actually in Himachal Pradesh. So I'm guided by Dr. Kriti Karant and I'm co-guided by Vidya Atreya, and I'm planning to do my PhD from Manipal University. So the whole presentation, how I've structured is, it is based on my experience of working with people in Himachal. It's not a very scientific presentation. I'm only going to be talking about the stories and the field experience that I've had and the projects that we have conducted in this area, and all the stories of the people and the leopards that I have experienced. Before I can do that, I actually want to talk about the relationship, the historic, right from historic evolutionary biology perspective of how people and large cats actually evolved together. And we've always heard about the stories of how humans or early humans like the hominids were actually the hunters. There is this other theory which is gaining very good traction of the man the hunted theory, where they found that the skulls, these skulls of early humans or hominids, have puncture marks which are consistent with the large cat canines. So the large cats, and this skull has been dated to 1 to 2 million years ago. And you can see several of these illustrations and paleontological evidence which suggests that man was actually the hunted. He was not the hunter in this relationship. And so during the day, the troops would scavenge around for any kills made by these large carnivores. And during the night, they would protect themselves in groups to prevent themselves from being hunted by these large cats. And so man was just another item on the menu of these large cats. There was nothing special about early humans. But in the current day, this is much more complex. The relationship between people and large cats is ranging from all the way from positive to negative. So in many areas, you see very high densities of people and very high densities of large cats living in complete coexisting with each other with very minimal negative encounters. There are also instances in Maharashtra and Gujarat where they are worshipping this deity called Vagoba, or the large cat deity. There are actually ceremonies of how people worship them. There are also instances where livestock attacks occur due to large cats, and this also affects people's livelihoods, because livestock rearing is one of the livelihoods of a lot of the majority of the people in this area in the world. So there are, even though we hear of human attacks all that often, they're actually quite rare. And they are much more prevalent in the Asian and African countries. And human attacks do occur due to these large cats. When it comes to the leopards themselves, almost 4 leopards are poached per week. A study by WPSI, Wildlife Protection Society of India, did a study where they found that almost 4 leopards poached per week in the country in India. And there are also many more undocumented cases of leopards being killed due to conflict, because there has been a human attack or a livestock attack that has happened. There have been there are many undocumented cases where we don't even know how many are actually killed. And during the mid 1900s, there's a vast collection of these popular articles and popular stories from hunters and from the British colonial era, where the large cats have been portrayed in a very man-eating kind of role, where all of these stories have shown these animals to be bloodthirsty animals that are after humans, and once they taste blood of a human, they're never going to go back to wild prey. And this has been so prevalent that a lot of the narratives that you hear in the media as well as in the movies, even today, you see these portrayal of these large cats happening. And as you all are aware, I think everybody would have seen these reports in the newspaper where you see man-eating tiger has picked up a child and gone. So most of the media reports also show these big cats in a very negative connotation, and many studies have also shown that these negative connotations affect how the public perceives these large cats in their backyards. Leopards, I am going to be focusing this talk on leopards among all the large cats because they are the most widespread, widely distributed large cat in the world. And they have their distribution all the way from Africa to Southeast Asia. What you see in gray is the historic distribution. And what you see in the different other colors are the current distribution of the leopards. There are currently 9 subspecies recognized genetically. And in the Indian subcontinent, which is Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have the Panthera pardus fusca, which is the subspecies found in the Indian subcontinent. The dark green areas are those that show where the current distribution of the leopards are, and you can see that it ranges all the way from forests in Karnataka and Kerala to deserts in Rajasthan and Gujarat, as well as the higher mountainous regions of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, and the Northeast as well. And so this species that is so widespread, it is not a great surprise that they're also in human areas. And this adaptation of this animal, the leopard, to be living in human areas causes it to encounter people much more often than any other large cat. So in Himachal, I have the state which I have been working for in since 2015. I will first give you a background of what I've seen of Himachal as geography in the geographical perspective. So this is the state boundary of Himachal, and you can see the dark brownish colors, the light brown and dark brown colors represent lower elevation, as the blue colors represent the higher elevation. And so if you can, I'm not sure if this is a very good map to show you what I'm trying to describe, but the mountain ranges are parallel to each other. And as you go south, the elevation reduces. So the light blue colors that you see, they are of higher elevations that range from 6,000 to 7,000, 5,000 to 6,000 meters above sea level. And at the lower elevations, these are around 300 meters. As you can see, there's a vast range of 300 meters to 7,000 meters of elevation, and the biodiversity really is different in each of these areas. And so you can see in the lighter areas, you see where almost the area looks flat and it's almost like Punjab, where you can see plains. Whereas in the higher Himalayas, it's snow-covered mountains where and you don't see any other animal which you are very familiar with in the plains. So there are 3 parallel ranges. One is the Great Himalayan Range. The next one, which is of a lower elevation, is the Punjab Himalaya, which is called here. And then there is the Shivaliks, or the lesser Himalayas. The area, the Himachal that I am familiar with, is highlighted in the lighter gray color. And Himachal actually has 12 districts. One district shows absolutely no presence of leopards, which is Lahul and Spiti. Lahul and Spiti has presence of snow leopards, and there is a clear distinction in distribution between these two cats of the state. There are no other large mammals present in the state. There are no other large cats present in the state, sorry, but there are bears and both kinds of bears. And so the leopard is the most widespread large cat in this state. And all of these gray areas show the presence of this animal either in the form of attacks on people or records by forest department of sightings of these animals. So the studies that we have conducted in the state range all the way from Chamba to Kinnaur, but a few of the studies we focused in the city of Shimla, which is the administrative headquarters of the state, as well as these three districts of Hamirpur, Mandi, and Bilaspur. I will be telling you the reason why we focused on these areas in the subsequent slides. The green areas actually represent the protected areas. And I haven't worked in any protected area throughout my study. So the people of Himachal are mostly agriculturists. Most people actually own their own land, and they either own land or livestock to varying degrees, but they are all agriculture based. They have an agriculture based economy. And so in this picture, you see there's fodder production happening where in different seasons. So they have very clear seasons of winter where not much is grown because the land is not very favorable for growth, as well as there are this summer season where they put crops ranging from rice to wheat to dals to vegetables to a lot of these different and any actually plant that they can grow. It's a very fertile soil as well. The thing about these people is that since they're agriculture based, each and every one of them would have seen a leopard or heard about a leopard in their village, either coming in and they have hardly seen it, or the leopard has like taken away a dog from their neighbor or come into their backyard. And I've heard these stories from everyone I have met. They'll show me pictures of it. And so I thought, so what about the leopards of Himachal? Why are they so interacting with everyone else, and like how have I not seen it? So what we did was we conducted a study of leopards in the administrative district of Shimla. It's a highly populated city where you find it's also a very popular tourist destination. So if actually you see a picture of Shimla, it's you hardly see the hill anymore. There are so many houses that you hardly get to see the actual land, how it was maybe 50-60 years ago. But what we wanted to see was even in this highly populated city, are leopards actually present? And so what we did was within the municipal limits, we set up camera traps equally spaced within the city limits in people's backyards. So we approached, we surveyed the area, and then in areas where we either found people have negatively encountered the animal, or if you found signs of like maybe scrape marks of the animal or scats, or people who have told us that they've seen it, we visited those locations. When we went to those locations, we started talking to people about like, have you seen a leopard in the area recently? And do you think we can possibly see it tomorrow? And things like that. And surprisingly, a lot of them were like, oh yeah, I have seen the leopard. It's right outside my house. Like, you want to put a camera? Why don't you put it in my backyard? And I'm going to help you with it. Not a single person told us that, no, leopard, can you please take it away from our area? So what most of our volunteers in the study, so we had 10 camera traps spaced throughout Shimla city. Throughout this study, most of our volunteers were local people. So they ranged from really old aunties who were like beta, come, like have chai with us, to like these kids who were super excited about meeting this leopard that comes into their house, which they're not allowed to see. And so in all of these 10 locations, by the end of the study, which is around 30 days, we found leopards in all of these 10 locations. So these are a bunch of volunteers, and in the background, you can see Shimla city in the night. So this is around 6:30 in the evening, where you can see like it's really dark. And so once they set up the camera and leave, they find the leopard a day later. So it's a day later where they saw this female walking up the same path that the volunteers had walked up. And this is not very far from a house. The other interesting story during our camera trapping was this uncle's house. So if you see this picture, it's a leopard walking in the veranda of a person. And you see that door, it's his main door. And so when we were looking around to put cameras, there was this uncle who was carrying his grandson, and like he came out of the house and he was like, I heard you people are looking to put cameras. Why don't you put it outside my house? You're definitely going to find a leopard because I know he's around. So then we were really curious. So we asked him like, Uncle, aren't you afraid of the leopard being outside your house and you with your grandson? And we saw he had a dog and livestock and all. So he's like, no, it's actually not that big a deal. If we are stupid, the leopard is going to be harmful to us. In all of the years that I have lived here, I have never seen the bad side of this leopard. And he says that as long as I keep my grandson, the dog, and the livestock inside the house, the leopard is going to mind his own business. And sure enough, we found the leopard in his front yard in the duration of the study. So we were thinking, if the leopard actually does come into human areas, why does it need to? Why doesn't it stick to forests? Why does it actually have to come into human areas? And then a lot of the scientific studies and this video shows, we found out why it actually does come into human areas. So if you can see, there are these eye shine that you can see coming up the stairs. This is in Shimla, just outside a person's house. It's his door. So I'll forward this a little bit. The leopard is so stealthy that the dog doesn't realize that there's a leopard right on top of him. We wouldn't have known the leopard was around if there wouldn't have been the CCTV footage to show us that he was there. So he is frozen in this stance. So this video is 5 minutes long, and he's frozen in this stance for almost 3 minutes. So I'll fast forward it a little bit. And as the dog moves to realize that the leopard is there, he catches the dog. Usually they wait until the prey is immobile, but the leopard hears a sound which we cannot hear, and he immediately runs away. So this brings us to the question of, so if the leopard actually comes into human areas so often, what is the proportion of the diet of a leopard which constitutes human associated resources like dogs, livestock? So we wanted to know what proportion of wild prey actually exists in this animal's diet. And so to be able to do this, what we did was we picked an area where there was higher recordings of people higher reporting of people who have experienced negative encounters with leopards. And we went around, walking around in these villages, trying to find the scat or excreta of leopards. And this was done in an area in Hamirpur, Bilaspur, Mandi district, Tri-Junction, where we focused on a 400 square kilometer area and walked routes to find scats. And from these scats, what we will be doing is trying to see what remains of the prey that the leopard has eaten. So any a carnivore scat can give us a lot of information about what was eaten by the hair of the prey that remains in these cats. And so if we can genetically identify these cats as being leopard, we can tell what the leopards are eating in the landscape. So I'm yet to conduct this study. I'm yet to finish the analysis of the prey ID for this study. So I'm not presenting them, but through this survey, what we actually found out on the photo to the left, you see one of my volunteers, Rito. He is collecting a scat on the edge of the road. So it's a tar road, and you see him sitting on the side collecting the scat to like sample it for the study. And the blue t-shirt man is our forest guard. And so what we did was we approached the forest guards and asked their help to walk around in the landscape that they're very familiar with and try to know if we can find these routes much easier. And this was a very good decision on our part, because the forest guards in Himachal have a very good relationship with the people in that area. And the forest guards actually introduced us into the whole landscape as people who are working on leopards. And so it gave us a very good introduction as to people who are not outsiders who know nothing, but people who are actually interested and not strangers. And so there would be many people, such as this old man who is pictured here, who would just come, stop by and say, like, beta, what are you doing? Why are you sitting and collecting dirt on the road? And we would explain to them what we're doing, and they would actually be fascinated. A lot of times they would be like, why don't you try this path? When I went to cut grass, I saw something that looked like what you were collecting. Why don't you go there? And people would invite us to chai and say, why don't you have chai with me? We would have almost 10 chais per day. And so it is this landscape where people aren't fearful of the animal. And we actually got to experience the leopards through these people. So what we figured was we would ask them what kind of animal did they actually see. And so we were out to do a leopard survey, but most of the people told us that they have seen a large cat which is almost as big as their shoulder, which has no spots. And sometimes the people would say, we have seen a cat which is striped, which it has no spots. And we would ask repeatedly saying, are you sure it has no spots? Like, are you sure it's a like Lakadbaka? And so they would say, no, it has stripes. We're entirely sure. And so there were these various avatars of these large leopard cat that we never knew existed. So we wanted to see how the Himachali people actually perceived the leopards that they live with. And so the volunteer in the study who conducted a very nice study with an ethnographic study with people living in Himachal. So what she did was she actually stayed with the various stakeholders of the landscape to try to know how their everyday life was, what they thought of the leopard. She would have semi-structured interviews, but long conversations with them about the leopard or not. Sometimes it would not be about leopards at all. What she found was very interesting. So she found that the people of Himachal negotiate space with the leopard by addressing the leopard as a thinking being. And so they would not associate the animal as a being or put it into one single box where the animal is going to repeatedly do the same. It's going to attack me, it's going to harm me. None of those thoughts ever came to them. So they thought of the animal as this mischievous cat that is out to get their dog, or is trying to, it's a very clever cat that is definitely out in their business. And so they could negotiate space with this animal. So they would say that if I discourage the leopard from taking my sheep, he's not going to come back again. And so we realized that they had also various different sources where they got this knowledge from. We, as our scientific knowledge, would say that the Panthera pardus fusca is only one species. It does not have any spots on it. And it has spots on it. It cannot be blank, and it's definitely waist high. For these people, where their knowledge systems come from myths, from the stories that they've heard from grandfathers, from their encounters with these animals, face to face on a daily basis, much more than us for sure. They have developed an idea of this animal which is much different than our own. And so he calls this the leopard with a small L. The leopard with a large L, where the scientific people have defined it as the Panthera pardus fusca, is very different from this leopard that the people recognize with a small L. As soon as we began the project in Himachal, we started conducting workshops to identify who all the stakeholders could be and who all actually reported on leopards or who actually interacted with these leopards. And so in the beginning of our November in 2014, I remember, we had conducted this workshop of our study. So this is Dr. Vidya Atreya presenting her study to the media personnel. So this was a workshop to report findings of leopards in Maharashtra who also live with people. And this study was her part of a PhD and her work for several 2 decades after that, at least a decade after that at least, where she was talking about how these animals live with high densities of people in the area. What do they actually eat? Their diet consists mostly of dogs. And then she also brought in a media person from Mumbai, who showed his experience of changing of reportage and how it affected how people perceive leopards. So he was talking about how he used to also report leopards as this khunkar, bloodthirsty, large cat that is out to get people, but that would not really help with the situation at all, because all you're doing is spreading the whole sensation of the animal being dangerous, but you're not being helpful on the front of what to do in case you encounter a leopard. And nobody actually knew that, because in cities, a lot of people haven't encountered this animal as a everyday on an everyday basis. And so this media reportage really helps the general public in perceiving the animal differently. And these workshops helped in knowing how the media felt about these animals in this state. We also, since Shimla was the headquarters and the administrative head, we conducted workshops for the forest minister, the chief minister, as well as the other secretariat officials. There were also hunters that we invited. There are official hunters in the state who were also invited into the meeting, as well as the media was present. And so this was done in collaboration with the Himachal Pradesh Forest Department and NCF, where we spoke about leopards and snow leopards of their state. We also conducted workshops for kids in the area, where they enacted how a leopard works, how a camera trap works. They knew that the leopard was in their backyards, and this is Jeru pictured in the presentations. She also gave a presentation to the cantonment area where there was military presence. So what we found from all of this study was that the initiation of a positive change, it only takes one interested party, one interested person even. And so the whole how a forest department official is actually pictured is a role that I am not familiar with. For instance, people talk about the forest department as not being entirely situation, but I found it a very different picture. And throughout my experience since 2015, I have always found them to be facilitating. And this project, this collaboration started only because a forest official initiated a research on leopards so they could manage leopards better in the state. And so what they actually wanted us to do was to develop a policy and a feeder document that helps them develop a policy of leopards in human use areas and how to reduce the number of attacks on people by leopards. And so what we plan to do in the future is to finish the study on diet, to see what the leopards are actually eating in these human use areas, to try to do this policy feeder document. And as part of my PhD in my research, I will be looking at how to minimize the attacks due to these leopards in the state. So there are, even though I have not shown it in the duration of this presentation, almost there was a study which found that almost 40 to 50% of the leopard deaths in a very small area in one district of Hamirpur, almost 40 to 50% of the leopards that die were due to unknown persons, which means that some human anthropogenic cause was associated with that leopard's death. And about 8% of them were shot as man-eaters. So the forest department can officially shoot some large mammals if they cause more than 3 human deaths in a single area. And so 8% died due to human deaths, and 40 to 50% died due to snaring, due to there were some poaching cases that were caught, and there were deaths of like leopards that were poisoned or hunted with gunshot wounds. And so there is this whole other angle of how, even though people can live with this animal, the leopard does face this kind of causes of death. And so as part of my PhD, what I'm looking at is try to see areas which have higher concentration of humans who've been attacked by leopards in the state. And so this map in the red spots, you see, these are the spots where people were actually attacked by the leopard from 2004 to 2015. And you can see in this Hamirpur, Mandi, Bilaspur region, there is a higher concentration, as well as in the Shimla Kullu border region. And so we want to find out the hotspots to try to see if these actually persist greatly over time, or were they really over a short period and they terminated once the leopard was shot. And so these are some of the questions that I will be asking as part of my PhD. And I would like to end my talk on these questions. And I would like to thank the Himachal Pradesh Forest Department, Wildlife Conservation Society, and Center for Wildlife Studies for facilitating this study. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is at the bottom. You can send me an email anytime you want.
Thank you so much, Sweta. And that was really interesting. In fact, that triggers my first question before everyone else starts. That is, did you see a lot of trapping happening before your project started, and the trapping being linked to, larger attacks, trapping and releasing, leading to large.
So I actually didn't see any trappings that were happening, and a lot of translocation instances that I heard from people were in the past. When I was actually conducting the survey in 2015, it was I didn't see personally any of these trappings. Yeah, so
okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because North Bengal we have a lot of trapping issues. So, and
yeah.
So
actually, Dr. Vidyathreya had conducted this study, this training program of all the forest personnel back in 2008 in Himachal Pradesh, where he trained them about the whole translocation and the darting and all of with veterinarians. And so she conducted this workshop much before this study actually happened. And so that might have had an effect on the rate of trapping. And so when you speak to the forest officials as well, you see that they're saying that, oh, we know that trapping is not good and we're not going to move the leopard much farther. So that knowledge is already there in them.
Yeah, we did the same thing in Mumbaikas, if you remember, under Vidya. So
yeah.
So Sweta, I think there are a few questions on chat. You can start looking at them. Can you see the chat window?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I think starts with Shayan. Before that, Saurav had a question. If Saurav, you want to type it the question or you want to ask the question to Sweta, please go ahead.
Hi, Sweta.
Saurav, tell me.
Yeah. I saw a documentary on the leopards of Aravalli Hills, and leopards are generally, what studies have shown is leopards are solitary animals. But there in the hills of Aravalli, the granite hills, I saw families of leopards staying together. Is that a change in their behavior based on their environment? Or now, is it only specific to those leopards? And still leopards are generally solitary animals? That's my question.
Yeah, so I have actually seen, so if you're talking about families, if there's a mother and cub, which actually sometimes the cubs don't look like cubs, they've
No, I
grown
saw
up.
about 8 or 9 leopards.
Common.
8 or 9
Oh, okay.
leopards
So
together.
I'm
Yeah.
actually, oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay. So
what
I'm
has
actually
happened
not
is
familiar with it. Yeah.
what has happened is that those hills are secluded hills, and the leopard concentration is quite high. It is the highest. The density is highest in the world, is what they were saying in the video, in the
Okay.
documentary. And almost like a lion's pride, leopards were living together. So 2 males were there, there were 3 females. This is southwestern part of Rajasthan. So if you could just throw some light on that.
Uh, are you talking about the Bera Hill leopards?
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
that
Oh, you're talking about the Jawai leopard, Sweta.
Java
Yeah, yeah.
leopards. Oh, I see, I
Yes,
see.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Vidya had gone and visited, in fact, if you remember.
Yeah. So they are actually something that is not very common in all the other areas. So I cannot really comment on if it's
All right, all right.
normal for them. Usually they're solitary animals, but their modes of communication are very different. So even if
Yes,
they're solitary, it doesn't mean that they're not familiar of leopard in the neighboring territory or their or their brothers and sisters. They're also establishing territories in their area, but we just don't see them living together. But in the Ravlis, maybe it's different. I can't comment on that.
okay, okay. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. So I'll take questions from the chat. The first of them is there a pattern of leopard distribution within Shimla city, for example, with housing density or population density? So the intent of our study in Shimla for camera trapping was only to see where the leopards were present. And so we didn't conduct any population estimation and we didn't do any analysis on it because we just wanted to show the people of Shimla that even though leopards are there in your city, it's something that is an everyday occurrence and it doesn't affect your lives as much. And so I have no idea about where the leopards actually live. But the people themselves do tell us that they live in the nalas much more than in the denser areas during the day. And so Shimla, since it's a 7 hills, it's called the sister 7 hills city. So they have areas in the nalas at the regions where people are not much present, where there are a lot more leopards than in the top ridges where people houses are. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I lost it. What's the next question? The next is, what reason did you infer for the leopards roaming away from the forests? So what we found was that I have actually not done any part of my study within protected areas. All of the study was done outside of protected areas, and these were resident leopards. They weren't straying from forests. And so since this is an agriculture-based landscape, there's a lot of areas where the leopards can stay without being detected on a daily basis by people. And so, like I mentioned, in the nalas, the leopards are always present during the daytime, but then they have this separation with people about movement during the night. And so you see them moving around at night, but you might not actually detect their presence. So this whole concept of them moving away from forest doesn't apply to leopards all that much in this state, at least. The next question is, Himachal has registered hunters. What do they do? Do they hunt for the government? So the hunters that were actually called for the workshops that I mentioned was people that the forest department recognizes as people that they can contact when they've declared the animal as a man-eater. And so these hunters are contacted by the forest department officially, and they are registered hunters. The next question is, how different is the perception towards leopards in Shimla, Hamirpur and Mandi, or say urban and rural areas? So the study that I mentioned that we conducted was in the areas of Hamirpur. We also conducted a similar study in Shimla. And we found that people were talking about these encounters with these animals in a very casual way. And so we didn't really compare the two studies, so I'm not entirely sure how to give a scientific explanation for this. But there definitely there are a range of reactions to the leopard that does exist within the state. It's not everybody being okay with the animal. For instance, when I was talking to people who were actually attacked by the animal, so I went around the state and interviewed people who have experienced these negative encounters and attacks by leopards. And what I saw was that a few of them did tell me that I don't want the leopard in this area. Why is it in my area? Why don't you put it in the zoo or outside? The government should do something about it. There were a lot of people saying that I left the light on outside my house, and so I left the light off outside my house, and my livestock was tied outside, and so it was my fault that the leopard came and took away my livestock. And so there's a range of these reactions as how they perceive the leopard. And I don't think that ranges from urban to rural areas, for example. It might be a different gradient than we're used to. The next one is, do people feel scared to live with leopards, or are people happily coexisting with them? So I think I covered this in the previous answer, where there's a whole range of people who have given me these answers of yes. I think nobody is completely okay. There is always an element of fear with a predator that they can potentially be harmed by. But then a lot of them do recognize the fact that if we are taking precautions of staying safe and keeping our livestock and dogs that the leopard is after safe, then we are not being harmed by the animal. It's out to do its own hunting, and it's out for its own food, and so let's just live our own lives differently. The next question is, does the leopard's coat change from place to place, as they are found in many places with very different weather conditions? So what I've noticed from at least camera trap photos is the shading of the leopard might be different, but it's not as different. For example, the Amur leopard has a very thick coat because it lives in winter regions. But beyond that, it does definitely have spots, and it is also the orange, yellowish colored animal that you find in most places. The next question is, I study in Uttarakhand. My university is surrounded by oaks and pine and deodar forest. There is a good population of barking deers, bears, and leopards, but the instances of leopard sightings are higher. Is it due to the presence of dogs and livestock? I am not sure why there is a higher instance of leopard sightings, but finding leopards out and about, I'm not sure. Can Karthik Gokhale, can you give some more details about this? Are you in the call? Okay, so I'll just answer the question based on what I understand.
Karthik, you can unmute yourself and talk to Sweta.
Okay, yes. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was talking about the instances of leopard sightings. There are many cases where dogs have been taken by the leopards, but we have not been able to detect why this happens. Our hostels mostly close by 8 p.m. at night. So once I saw a leopard moving from the auditorium. So why we do not sight the deer and bears that much?
Maybe, I actually have no idea. So what I can actually tell you is that leopards do come, like you saw in the video. Leopards do come for these dogs, and since dogs live much closer to where humans are, so for the garbage as well as they're fed by a lot of the people, they live very much close to where people are. So maybe they may be approaching human areas much more than any of the other animals that you've mentioned, and that might possibly be the reason why you'll be spotting them more. But it's nice that you're spotting them. I haven't seen a leopard so many times, I think.
I was about to say that, Sweta. You're very lucky. We must say, Karthik.
I know. In all of my study in Himachal, I've seen leopard maybe 2 or 3 times, and that's it.
Yeah, or if you could have actually
I
told
have
the
also
same
seen,
to a certain extent.
I have also seen only 2 or 3 times, but heard about sightings more.
I see. Okay.
And once we encountered a leopard in front of us. We did not see it. It was growling from the bushes, and we ran from there.
And it did not chase you, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is, what can we do to help reduce the stigma of man-eater leopards? This actual concept is much more complex than I have shown in the presentation. So like I mentioned, humans and large cats have evolved together, and we actually have no defense against large cats or any other predator. But the one evolutionary remnant of our relationship with them was the fear. So we actually fear them very intrinsically right from our ancestors. And so to reduce the stigma, there have been several workshops that we have conducted that with media and the influential people. But to completely reduce it, I'm not sure how we can go about it. But trying to put out these positive stories of how people actually, especially in India, how people actually live with these animals does help. And so people see another angle of the animal than they're so used to seeing. The next question is, do leopards compete with any other predator in these parts? You mentioned bears inhabit the same region. So I haven't done many ecological studies in this area other than the camera trapping and diet. So we actually don't know if I have actually not witnessed competition, but I'm very sure that there are areas where there are more bears. What we saw was there was so the snow leopard separation already in them. The next question is, how do forest officials work towards no poaching? Do leopards mark their territories just like tiger? If not, how different? Do people tame leopards in Himachal Pradesh? So the first question is, how do forest officials work towards no poaching? For now, I think the forest officials have drives, and I have witnessed them doing seizures of leopard skin, and you read about them. But more than that, patrolling also helps in the whole detection of poaching. But to reduce poaching entirely is a whole other operation, I feel. The second question is, do leopards mark their territory just like tigers? Yes. So just like any other large cat, leopards also are extremely territorial animals where they have very set boundaries of where one leopard's territory is. And I don't have a diagram to show it, but it's essentially, if it's a square, if you imagine, it's very nicely distributed amongst all of the leopards in that area. And there are some animals which are transient, where they're trying to find areas to establish as their own territories. Sometimes there are also overlapping territories of the females' territories with the male territories. And the size of the territory really differs with the kind of resources and the landscape that they're living in. Do people tame leopards in Himachal Pradesh? I have not witnessed any leopard that was a pet leopard. So there have been leopards that have been captured from the wild and put in rescue centers because either they were injured or they were found by people in the area. But I haven't seen any tame leopards by people, nor have I read it in Himachal in the news. The next question is there an effective way to minimize the human leopard conflict? That's a huge question. So the one thing that I am trying to focus on as part of my PhD is try to see if human safety can be ensured in areas where people share space with the leopards. And so even though I have mentioned that they may be tolerant to the presence of these animals in the area, this tolerance and this ability to live with the animals does reduce if there has been a human attack or a livestock attack. And that's very normal because it's affecting your livelihood, your lives, the people you love. And so to try to identify how we can minimize these instances where people have been injured by the animal is one way to start to minimize the human leopard conflict. And if you can recognize that the leopard isn't actually out to get people intentionally, it's a start.
Hi Shweta, actually, I had some, like I would like to add a little bit more to that question.
Okay.
So the thing is, as you know, in Sri Lanka, the human elephant conflict, that was a raging issue. So what people
Yeah.
found out as solution to that was, as elephants are, they have a fear towards bees. So people, they planted, beehives, as in, urban beekeeping and stuff like that. So, that reduced the human elephant conflict to quite a number of extent. And to add to that was, like they even had economic benefits from that. As you know, the beehive matured, they could extract honey and sell it, or maybe beeswax or royal jelly. So rather than we humans interfering into that thing, is there a way, this human leopard conflict can be, uh, reduced a bit more biologically, or environmentally? Is there a way we can do that?
Sakshi, Sweta, just a quick one. I would like to ask
Yeah.
Sakshi that the bee thing which you mentioned about the human-elephant conflict,
Yeah.
which region are you talking about?
I don't exactly know the region, but that was done in Sri Lanka. So when
Yes.
I was a
So
part of a
it is,
volunteer program.
yeah, so Sri Lanka is the only successful project in terms of the bees keeping the elephants out. But
Yeah.
in most cases all over India, it does not work. Even in North Bengal, it doesn't work. South Bengal, it doesn't work. Everything mostly, it doesn't work because of the environment, ecosystem, and everything. So, and I think Sweta can tell you more about the leopard part. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
Sweta, by any chance, any things like bees can put the leopard off? And I don't see
No,
any
actually,
problem.
so what I was going to say was, since you're asking about some organic, biological way
Yeah.
to stop the leopard, it's not a thing that we can focus on. So what I was going to say was, each system which involves the landscape, the species, and the people is very different. And so one mitigation method, like you were mentioning, the bees for the elephants, might not work in other areas for many reasons.
Yeah.
So the found that the bee species is very aggressive in Africa, and that will not work in India. And so several of these factors actually come into play when you're looking at mitigation of these attacks. But to really minimize this conflict is a very large thing to do, and we're still working towards it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks
so
a
I
lot.
have no silver bullet that solves the conflict. Yeah.
I
Sure.
can, Sweta, if you don't mind, I'll just add, like Sweta just mentioned, like in elephants and in this country, whose mitigation efforts are different in different regions because of specific region level issues. In North Bengal side, where there is a tea garden landscape, I'm sorry that the biologist who actually works out here is not part of the call today, but he would have told you that even with elephants and leopards out here, the whole mitigation concept changes, because the leopards out here are found in the tea gardens and not in the forests, and so the general attacks and etc. are different. Their whole ethology is different. So which is a bit different from how Himachal, you see, Sweta talked about. So all
Yes.
in India, very interestingly, although the species is same, but their mitigation theories are very much ecology dependent, in fact.
Okay.
Mumbaikas was different. If you remember, Sweta, I'm sure Vidya might have,
Yeah.
you might have looked about Mumbaikas was different because it was an urban landscape. So we actually took care of the garbage and the dogs around, which actually helped in reducing a lot of leopard attacks.
So the
One
people
more
who
thing.
aren't aware of the Mumbaikars for SGNP project that Dia is mentioning, so it's the collaboration, it's actually a citizen science project. So the people who live around the area actually took up the initiative to change the perception of the leopard in the area, because a lot of the urban people aren't very used to seeing leopards in their apartment building, and they don't know what to do about it, and so they're very scared of this animal that they know nothing about, and they've heard in the media that says that it eats their kids. So what they found was that if they actually engage with the media and the people about how to be safe around these animals, which includes very basic things like trying to clean up your house around your area, try not to put out garbage which attracts dogs and pigs, which the leopards come for. And so just by doing that much, they have reduced human attacks in that area to bare minimum.
Hi Shweta, this is Deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add on to what you just said, because I have worked with Orithro in North Bengal in this project, and I think one more person who has worked with me, she is also there in the conference call. Orithro, I think he's not here, but there are some very interesting things that we observed, that I carried out the occupancy survey there. So there were very interesting things that we observed is that even in the tea gardens where you have leopard sightings, the tea gardens which have restricted movement of illegal, like movement of livestock is generally being banned by the tea companies. So even the tea gardens which had put on this kind of like rules so that the livestock can't roam around in the tea gardens, didn't show much movement of leopards inside the tea garden, but rather there were movement of leopards near the settlement of the tea laborers, where the livestock was more often seen grazing
Tied
around
in that area.
yeah, but it's very interesting is that even adjoining tea gardens show different kind of presence of tea leopards. So in maybe a tea garden which is beside one tea garden uh, which is not showing any leopard presence or movement within the tea garden, but in the other tea garden where there are herbivore movement signs, you have leopard signs as well, and also a movement of dogs triggered in a way. So that is one thing. But one thing very interesting that I thought of discussing was like you have this predator-proof collars, right? So did you see this kind of innovations being used by any of the livestock keepers, or are these even handy here? Like,
yeah, so in Himachal, actually, there's a range of things that they do employ to deter the leopard from coming in. One is that spiky collar that you mentioned. So the dogs in the area, which are in the lower elevation at least, they have this collar with metal spikes on them. And that deters the leopard from biting. So the leopard on the shepherds, they have dogs that are so ferocious that they can drive away the leopard from. So they're huge dogs. They're like much more ferocious than your normal street dog that you see, and even you're scared of approaching them, and that definitely deters the leopard from coming into the sheep corral or the people. Yeah, so these are the two things I have seen in Himachal. The next question is, in Tumkur, there have been instances where leopards have rushed into houses. What might be the reason for this? So the people that I interviewed in Himachal, there have been many funny stories where they've told me that the leopard was actually chasing the dog into the house. Was chasing the dog, and both of them just got locked into the house in a room. And the dog and the leopard were found much like 2 to 3 hours later, when they actually called the forest department to rescue it and get that out of the house. They found that the dog was still alive, and both the leopard and the dog were sitting in separate sides of the room, where like each of them were so scared about being inside this enclosed space that they didn't know what they should do. And so a lot of the times where the leopards have come into the houses, it's been in my experience because of dogs, or they're coming to check out if there has been any other livestock. Sometimes they store livestock in the understory of their house. So I'm not sure if they have kept livestock just outside the house, even in Tumkur, but that might be one of the reasons that they do come into inside human structures.
Sweta, where was this picture, the famous picture where the leopard was in a toy store and this guy opened in the morning and he was on one of the shelves?
One of the shelves. No, I'm not sure where it's from, but I know exactly which picture you're talking about. Yeah. I'm not sure where it's from. The next question is, how was your experience of conducting media sensitization workshops in Himachal? What were people's perceptions of leopards like? So when we actually conducted the workshop, when we actually called the media people over, they were hoping that we give them press releases of our study. And this is mostly what their expectation was when they came into the workshops. And we had individually invited each of the media houses and the journalists that cover environmental issues. But they were only hoping for, like any other study, they were hoping for a press release of what we are talking about. And we had none. We didn't have any written out statement of what we're going to, what we wanted them to publish. We actually didn't want them to publish. And so through the workshop, a bunch of them did ask questions about, are you going to conduct this study further, and what you're going to do in Himachal, and how the leopards of Maharashtra are different from Himachal. And the media person that I mentioned, Virat, he's part of Mumbaikars for SGNP as well. So when he started speaking, the people actually listened to what he was talking about, because he's talking about as me, the journalist. And so they got a lot more interested and engaged after he started speaking. So until then, they were only hoping for the study to like give out a press release. And mostly the people who were reporting leopards weren't entirely wildlife based. Like they weren't only reporting environmental issues and stuff. They were also covering a lot other issues. And so none of them had any particular affinity or any other perception about leopards. It was just one of their jobs. The next question is, do leopards have the alpha male concept? I am not sure, but I think the stronger leopards, like tigers, do have better territories. And so it's not like a pack of lions where there's an alpha male which controls the other males in the pack. That's how much I know. The next question is, why do leopards prefer dogs over other herbivorous livestock like sheep and goats? I've come across the fact that carnivores prefer to eat herbivores over other carnivores. The meat of herbivores is tastier. I have no idea which is tastier actually. I hope the leopard someday will tell me what is better, but it's I think the affinity for dogs is simply because they're so much more numerous in these areas. Like a lot of the peri-urban areas don't have that high density of sheep and goats anymore. And so the dogs are so much more higher in density and easier to get. And so I think in sheep and goats, they also have a lot more protected, they're in livestock corrals, or they are guarded by sheepdogs. And so they're much harder to get to sometimes than dogs. So that's my guess. Actually, I have no idea if it's got to do with the taste or if it's got to do with their defense mechanisms. How much less defense mechanisms do the dogs have over sheep and goats, for example? But what we've seen, they do prefer the medium-sized prey. So they can't go after, even if they do prey livestock, it'll be the calf, because they're smaller than tigers. And they can't really hold on to a calf even if they kill it. So it's usually small to medium size. So sheep, goats are also fed on. Even cats, they do feed on. And so there are all of these animals found in the diet of leopards in studies done. There's another question where it says, is there a difference in behavior of leopards for different diets? I have seen in many videos where a group of feral dogs attacked a leopard and killed it. Has there been any incident of such in your area? So there have been instances where we have found leopards with bite marks, and there have been infected wounds of leopards found, and we can actually never say if it was another leopard or a dog. And I have personally not witnessed any dogs affecting leopard distribution, but I have definitely seen videos just like you have on the internet where dogs are chasing leopards away from the area, and they're perfectly capable of doing that if they're in large packs. There's one question where they're asking, how is the process of counting leopard population? So because these are elusive carnivores where you cannot see them directly, what they do is set up cameras. So for instance, if you want to count the number of leopards in Bangalore, what they do is try to equally space out cameras within the city of Bangalore, which remotely detect the presence of these animals. So one of the methods is this, one of the ways of doing it is this camera trapping method, where these cameras that are placed in each area, they capture a leopard that has passed in front of it. And each leopard spots are different for different individual. And so you can recognize, just like our fingerprints, you can recognize the leopard based on its spots. And so if we can take photos of both sides, both flanks of the leopard, if you place two cameras in front, we can identify what animal it is. And using like a bunch of statistics that I completely don't get, they can estimate what the population of the leopard is in that area. And so if you can limit your study area and your study duration, you can tell at that moment, given leopard deaths and leopard births are same, not same, they're balanced in that short duration of 30 days, sometimes, most times. The number of leopards in that area is this many. So it's an estimate. It cannot be, it's like the difference between census and sampling. And so you sample the population to try to see what the population can be. The next question is, are man-eater leopards shot down or rehabilitated to another protected area away from human residence? So the official policy, the Wildlife Protection Act, gives the chief wildlife warden the power to declare any animal man-eater, even a protected animal a man-eater, if it has caused more than 3 human deaths in that particular region. And so these man-eaters are only defined by the forest department when the human attacks happen, and they are definitely shot down. But unofficially and much more not documented is the deaths that people actually, the leopard deaths that happen due to people who have set out, maybe sometimes they have snares of bike cables that they have put out in the landscapes. And so all of these are also they cause leopard deaths. So the aim of the forest department many times, if they want to, is to trap the leopard and put them in rehabilitation centers as well. They don't actually, they try to tranquilize it in many areas. I've seen in Himachal where they first declare the animal a man-eater and advise the hunter to first tranquilize it. And so they did first shoot out the tranquilizer dart, but they did end up killing the animal when it approached them. And so a lot of these man-eater hunting stories, I don't know how entirely accurate they are, but definitely they do shoot the animal officially. There's another question.
Can I quickly add to that? I think in case of carnivores, even with tigers, first of all, declaring a man-eater and identifying the exact monitor is always a big shady part. It's very
Oh,
gray
yeah.
area.
Yeah. That I definitely forgot to mention. Yeah.
May I ask a question about this regarding man-eater?
Yeah, please, Sweta.
So one question I have: if a carnivore, say a leopard or even a tiger, if it tastes the blood of man once, so does it kind of get addicted to it, like human beings get addicted to cigarettes or alcohol? So why there is a need to kill a man-eating carnivore?
So it's a very understudied concept. Like, I am not entirely a believer of the fact that if they taste the blood of a human, we're very easy prey. But at the end of the day, it's not something that they get addicted to like cigarettes, is my guess. But it's, like I said, it's so understudied that I cannot really answer the question of why they choose humans sometimes and then continue with it. But the whole concept of, if you can like they are mentioned, like if you can definitely identify which is the animal, that has always been the problem, trying to identify the right animal. If you can definitely identify and eliminate it, I think that will be saving a lot more leopard lives than if you allow the animal to live. And
Due
so if
to prevention of
for
retaliatory killings.
yes. So, I have personally witnessed this, where in an area where there have been attacks on people, uh, one leopard was shot officially, but in the newspaper, previously and subsequent days, almost 8 leopards were reported as dead. And they found these animals to be hanging up in a tree, or like caught in snares, or poisoned, and various others. So shooting one leopard, as long as you take the precautions of trying to identify the right one, does really help in de-escalating the situation. So there's another question. How much is deforestation and general habitat affecting these leopards? So leopards have always, the reason why I'm so fascinated by them is because they're a very adaptable species. And they have, like I mentioned, been adapted to living in so many different areas that although deforestation is occurring, the actual threat to that population is human-induced killing due to retaliatory killing and reduction in their range. And so I'm not, there aren't any studies that tell me how direct deforestation actually affect their distribution, for example. And general habitat, like I mentioned, they're really adaptive. So it's very hard to tell there are no studies that actually look at their population outside of protected areas. And so in human areas, there have been, like you can count them on your fingers, that there are very few studies in India, at least, that try to see what leopards are like in human areas. And so to try to tell you how it's affecting these leopards is another really hard question. Yeah, I think those are all the questions there are in the chat box.
Anyone else who would like to? Sweta?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I call in a colleague of yours who seems to be online, and she's done some great work with you on the leopards? Dhi, you're there?
Oh yeah, she's there. Yes.
Hey Dhi, can you unmute, and why don't you talk a bit about your very interesting experience and your lifestyle, which you did. You stayed with the farmers and all. And Sweta, please do put on the chat window the paper which you all released, you published.
Yeah, sure. I'll put out these papers.
Hey Dhi.
Hi, Dhi.
I was following you for quite some time. I thought, okay, we must call her. In fact.
Oh wow.
Okay. So, Dee, why don't you tell them how you actually did what you did?
So actually, I went to Himachal as Shweta's volunteer for the diet study, and as she was describing, the people in Himachal are such that they always call you in, talk to you, and sorry, just a sec. Yeah, so they interact with you a lot, they chat with you, they tell you stories. So coming from a social science kind of background, I was interested in that, and I started listening to their stories. And I felt like there was something different about the way they were talking about these leopards, right? So what I did was eventually shift into an ethnographic kind of work, where so I was looking at how people perceive these animals by just talking to them and seeing what they have to say about these leopards, how they describe these leopards, what is their relationship with them over time. So so I started speaking to different people in the village. It would be like the shepherds that come down to Hamirpur for for the for the winter, and then there was the forest department officials, and there was the villagers that were there, and even within that there would be sarpanch, there would be a priest, there would be, you know, like different members of that society, and how they would talk about these leopards and their own, yeah, their own view on these animals. So that's briefly what I was doing there.
And he also stayed with them and did some farming, right? Dee?
Yeah. It was fun. Actually, one of the
Enjoyed a lot.
family there that kind of
Yeah,
took me in. Yeah, so then I would just stay with them, and they, yeah, they just took me into their life, which was really nice because I could go to like some function that was going on and talk to people over there, go do some farming, live their life, and like interact with people in that way, not as, you know, this outsider that's come in who's trying to do this survey and extract some information out of them. So it, yeah, it helped a lot to do all that.
Oh, sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Seriously.
he ate really good food as well during the whole time.
Yeah, that too.
अरे वाह, ये तो bonus हो गया in fact. Yeah. So anyone else who would like, you know, both of them were part of the same study and the research part. So anyone else would like to ask them anything? So going one, going two, going three. No? Fine. I mean, I think they, yeah, someone wants to ask. Shakshi, yeah, you want to ask something? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so just like, you know, Dee was the volunteer, you know, like she assisted Shweta. So, you know, is there a way we can do the same? Like, is it a possibility we can also volunteer for such projects? Like, is something like that?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the NGOs are looking for volunteers who are more than like they have so requirement of people that if you just go online, there are a bunch of NGOs that I can put up their websites, and you can definitely, they're looking for people who are, they can volunteer their time, their expertise. Why not? If you're interested in wildlife, there's job for you.
Yeah,
But
sure,
as long
sure.
as you're
like I'm interested. So, you know,
yeah,
if you could put up. Sorry,
yeah.
your voice is not audible. You know, it just got cut down.
So I was saying, as long as you're okay with not much pay and like being out in the wilderness all the while, this, like you can apply.
I am
to
literally okay with, you know, volunteering. Like I am not asking for pay. I mean, I would love to volunteer as that. You know, I'm looking for more experience. So it is completely okay, you know, even if it's like, you know, being a volunteer, I would love to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So I can shall I put it up in the chat box?
Yeah, that will
What
be
are,
great.
can I
Yeah.
ask which city you're based out of?
Okay,
So
so
most of the
currently
Bangalore.
I'm based in Nasik right now. That is in Maharashtra. So I'm
Yeah.
based there right now.
So I'll put up a few of the NGOs that work in that area, and you can check their website out and then see if they have any positions open. You can actually just shoot them an email and say, I am very interested. Do you have any positions for me as well? Like they'll
So
definitely.
currently, I'm working with Eco Foundation, which is in Nasik itself. So I'm working with them, but like I would like to explore more, out of Nasik maybe, and so because all that I'm acquainted to is throughout the Maharashtra and Nasik. So if maybe I
Achha.
could get out and learn something more. So that's the reason, because I have no idea about the other places or the other NGOs that are out there. So
So
anything
Sakshi, to add to it, if you are
yeah.
interested, in fact, Sweta now works with CWT, which is under Kriti. And Kriti has a very interesting project going on called Wild Chalet. And that takes in a lot of volunteers, if I'm not mistaken, Sweta, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there are.
Wild Chalet is a conflict management project. Sweta can tell a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so right now, while Chalet isn't functioning because of the COVID situation where we can't approach school. So essentially, the project is about going into schools and just talking about wildlife with children. And so it's
Okay.
based on 4 questions. So they approach the same school 4 times, and they present, I think, about the wildlife around them. And this happens in Maharashtra as well. And they do it around protected areas. So all the schools that are present around Tadoba, I think they finished Tadoba area, and all of these areas, they focus on those villages that are beside protected areas so that they can talk to the children who live with these animals and know that they're in their backyards. And so this Wild Chalet program has been going on for, I think, two phases now, which is over one school academic year.
Okay.
And they will be doing it in the academic year. It entirely depends on this whole COVID scenario and if you're funded further. So I didn't mention that. But Center for Wildlife Studies is also will be looking for volunteers once we can start our field work. So I'll be putting up our organization.
Sure. And could you please, give your insights on what are the other NGOs, that we could join in order to learn more about maybe the rehabilitation process or something like that? What would you suggest?
So rehabilitation is very area specific. So the kind of NGOs that is most all over India is, I think, Wildlife SOS. They do rehabilitation work in
Yeah,
Wildlife Trust of India. So
sure.
I can. So why don't you send me an email? I can definitely write up these organizations in that email. That would be better, right? Like my
Yeah.
email ID, I'll put it in the chat box, and then I can send you these names.
Sure, that will surely work. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone else doesn't have any questions, I think we can wrap off and let them have a peaceful night. And thank you so much, Sweta. Thank you, Dhi, also to jump in. And it was so interesting because leopards itself is such an elusive animal, and then so much to learn about them, so much to talk about them. And like someone said, that we get to see once in a while, we hardly get to see. In fact, people go crazy to see leopards. But so yeah, anything else you would like to add, Sweta?
No, that's it. I think thanks everyone for coming. I think very few people are left, but all of you who have stuck around till now, thank you for attending my webinar, and thank you, Heel. Thank you, Dia, for letting me
Thank
do.
you so much, Sweta. Thanks for joining. It was wonderful. And just to let everyone know that we are currently, because of the situation in Kolkata and the storm which has totally disrupted everyone's lives, we cannot continue with the webinar, which had actually very interesting talks by the turtle biologist called Arpita and the others, but they literally don't have electricity. So we will let them go, and maybe we can have a different other webinar session sometime soon. So apologies for that. And thank you very much for being with us all this while from last week. It's actually literally the time we started last week. So we started last Tuesday, and this is the Tuesday, in fact. So we are ending here. Thank you so much, and have a great time, and hope you all had a great fun hearing all the great talented ladies who spoke to you, all of you, in fact. Thank you. And take bye, Sweta. Talk to you soon.
See you. Yeah.
Bye.